Hello, content warning here. I talk about sexual assault in this episode, so take care listening. You should talk to the women in your life about the porn they watch. If they're comfortable sharing, you'll probably find that for most of them, their relationship with it is complex. It's really, really difficult to talk about porn and feminism without making people mad, and there's a long, fraught history of this. In her book, Women on Porn, Dr. Fiona Vera-Gray says, for women, there's only two permitted narratives. Either you're the cool girl who loves porn, or you're the one who thinks it's violent. It's pleasurable or it's shameful, but never a mix of the two. And the consequence of all of this has been that most of us have stayed silent. Well, not anymore. After 2 decades of everyone watching porn online, women included, we are finally talking about it. Women are juggling multiple feelings at once on sex, violence, and men, which we'll get into, but there is one common theme emerging. More and more women are getting their erotic content elsewhere. We're reading gay hockey smut or romantasy. That's where romance merges with fantasy, with fairies and dragon tamers. We're listening to point-of-view audio erotica with explicit sound effects, and we're getting real confessional sex stories sent straight to our inbox. There's a whole world out there beyond mainstream porn online for you to explore, and it's so much fun. I'm Lily O'Farrell, and this is No Worries If Not, a podcast about women and internet culture. Hot for the plot, romantasy, heated rivalry, women and erotica. Before we get into this episode all about romantasy and erotica, I want to talk about desire. Women are writing their own erotic content and seeking out new ways to express ourselves. A place that's built for that kind of exploration is Feeld, that's F-E-E-L-D, a dating app for the curious, where you can be curious about yourself as well as other people. Learning about your desires is expansive, complex, and exciting, and Feeld really leans into that. It gives you space to explore what you already know you like and what you're trying out, your newer desires that you're curious about, whether that's casual dating, kink, or just finding people who want to talk about fairy smut for hours. There's not the same fast swipe pressure like other apps, and you can let attraction build and go back to people's profiles if you change your mind. Feeld recently launched a free self-discovery tool called Reflections, which encourages you to explore your desires, your boundaries, and your relationship styles, things we're just not really encouraged to articulate, especially as women. Also, very on theme for today's episode, Feeld has a magazine called AFM, which stands for A Magazine. Firstly, iconic. Secondly, they have an amazing article titled How Dragon Smut Dispelled My Existential Angst, which is going to make excellent further reading for this episode. I really like the film essays in AFM, like What Moulin Rouge Can Teach Us About Love, or my favourite, which is about how fruit is used in film to represent sex. There's something really refreshing about the culture on Feeld. People tend to be honest about their desires and non-judgmental of others. The last guy I met on Feeld, I introduced him to audio erotica, and we would listen to it together. And now he's so into it, he even listens without me. I have hours of audio to catch up on. So if you're feeling curious about desire, connection, and about who you might be becoming, you can go to feeld.co or download Feeld on the App Store or Google Play. Enjoy your fairy tale quest to slay a dragon, rescue a princess, and write your own romance story. It's a great time to be a horny woman who loves to read. Book sales of romance fiction and romantasy are skyrocketing, and last year they pushed fiction profits in the UK above £1 billion for the very first time. Romantasy, sometimes called fairy smut, although there's a divide about the term smut, and we'll get into why, has all sorts of different fantasy realms. One of the most popular book series, A Court of Thorn and Roses, or ACOTAR to its fans, by Sarah J. Maas, takes place in a fairy realm. Or there's Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, which is all about dragon riders. Then there's romance fiction, which you're probably more likely to be aware of. Bridget Jones is a great example of a romance fiction series that blew up and showed everyone what a huge demand there is for this genre. There's also erotic romance fiction, which goes way back. Books like Lady Chatterley's Lover, published in the 1920s and banned. It's been adapted multiple times for TV and film, but I personally recommend the recent Netflix adaptation with Jack O'Connell. It's like injecting crack into your eyeballs. More recently, though, we have the historical romance series Bridgerton. Set in the Regency period, it was adapted from a loved book series, and it's in Netflix's top 10 most popular series of all time. The popularity of these books is partly down to Book Talk, the thriving TikTok community which is dominated by women, where people discuss and recommend books to each other. Also, women do just overwhelmingly read more fiction than men. Women make up between 70 and 80% of all fiction readers. When I had dating apps, I used to ask men to recommend a book to me, and they would so often send me history books, a self-help book by a millionaire, or a memoir by some guy who's climbed Mount Everest. I changed the prompt to brackets, fiction only, and that was a really good way to meet the guys in the 20% of fiction readers. Please feel free to steal that for your own dating app profile. When the newest book in the Fourth Wing series, that's the romantasy about dragon riders, was released, it became the fastest-selling adult novel in 20 years, selling nearly 3 million copies in the first week alone. And recently, Bloomsbury said they had their biggest year of sales ever, thanks in large part to A Court of Thorn and Roses. So romantasy has injected life back into publishing, which is great. But what about the romance novels that aren't set in a fantasy world? In November, Heated Rivalry blessed our screens, a TV adaptation of a queer hockey romance written by Canadian author Rachel Reed. It follows these two young rising stars of ice hockey, Shane and Ilya. They're closeted and on rival hockey teams, and over the course of 10 years they fall in love. The sex scenes are explicit but romantic and erotic, and the TV show is a beautiful example of how to show consent on screen. I loved it, obviously. I watched the entire thing over 2 days and got deep into the online fandom. The show was a small indie that got picked up by HBO, and just 2 months after its launch, it had 10 million viewers per episode. That's the entire population of Portugal or Sweden tuning in. 10 million views per episode and a majority women fan base. Clearly, women want to watch sex on screen. We just want the sex to be firstly consensual and secondly good. When people discovered that women loved Heated Rivalry, it started a big cultural conversation about why these sex scenes in particular were so titillating, as opposed to the straight sex scenes that pander to the male gaze, whether that's through showing violence or showing the woman climax in like 10 seconds from penetration alone. This is the giant, throbbing button at the center of this episode. Women are looking for erotica that isn't regular porn, which up until now have overwhelmingly shown women through the male gaze. According to the stats, the primary audience for romance and romantasy books are women aged 35 and under, which is so interesting because that's the age bracket that's grown up with complete and unfiltered access to porn on the internet. And instead, they're choosing books and queer hockey shows. Predictably, there's a lot of snobbery directed at romance and romantasy books, and I say predictably because any art form with a woman fan base is sneered at, because women are dumb, so whatever they like is unintelligent, while at the same time, genre fiction such as sci-fi and Tolkien-esque fantasy aimed at men seems to keep winning accolades. So who better to talk to about this than the owner of Saucy Books, England's first ever bookshop dedicated exclusively to romance?
So I'm Sarah Maxwell. I'm the founder and owner of Saucy Books, which is England's first romance bookstore, or first bookstore that specializes in romance. Around actually this time last year, so early Feb, I couldn't find my favorite romance authors in stores. So I had met Helen Fielding at an event, and I love Bridget Jones. She's like one of my OG favorites. And I had like a really tough week at work, and so I thought I'm going to go to my favorite bookstores throughout London and like find my favorite romance authors. I started at one and I couldn't find anything. So then I kind of went to another and another and another. And it got progressively harder. And I got progressively more frustrated. And so I kind of thought, why doesn't England have a romance bookstore? Why doesn't London have a romance bookstore? Like, we have all these amazing, incredible authors here who created the genre, like including Jane Austen. So I just felt like it was something that was missing.
Sarah had been thinking about setting up the business for a while, and then she went on a holiday with a group of friends and discovered that totally coincidentally, they were all reading the same book, one from the Fourth Wing series. She was like, okay, this is a big thing. Her background is in tech, so she's helped build brands from the ground up, like Uber and Spotify, so she's very good at trend spotting and knowing how to appeal to customers. Some people call these books smut, and there's a divide on Book Talk about whether that's playing into the snobbery directed at art loved by women, like it's not worthy of literary respect. But some fans are embracing and reclaiming the word. This is a tale as old as time. People have called romantic comedy films chick flicks, and for a long time, romance books were called chick lits. And for Sarah and her shop, she came up against these attitudes straight away.
So, opened in June of 2025, like during Independent Bookstore Week, and I was really surprised by the reception was overwhelmingly positive in terms of like customers coming from all over, like romance readers, fans being so excited, the authors being really enthusiastic and like, really supportive, which was amazing. But I was surprised by how snobby people were about it. And they do this like, oh, romance. Like, I don't read romance. I'm like, yes, you do. You do read romance. Everybody does. I didn't expect to have to do as much education around the genre as I have. And I'm happy to advocate it. I will like all day long. But I think that's probably what prevented a romance bookstore from opening previously, potentially, was like there is this inherent bias against it and that snobbery in literature. But I really do think that, like, it's your time. So, like, if you're going to spend it, like, why not enjoy yourself? And, like, why suffer through a book when there's so many amazing stories that you would enjoy and, like, read so quickly and then, like, just get so immersed in. And they're so well written. So, like, it's not a waste of time by any means. There's nothing wrong about reading romance. So it's still very surprising to me how, like, this sort of preconceived notions around romance. But to your point, like, romance is 20% of fiction sales. It does carry the industry.
Sarah is right. Everyone consumes romance stories. Even if you think you don't, you do. Even if the TV, film, or book you're consuming doesn't market itself as romance, it will more often than not have some version of a love story running through it. And men, you love romantasy. Game of Thrones, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. Depending on whether you classify it as fiction or non-fiction, even the Bible is heavy on romantasy themes. Benevolent man in the sky impregnates a teenage virgin, gives birth to a kind, hunky wizard who dies and comes back to life. Come on!
So I find that, like, that word smut really frustrates me. I'm trying to reclaim it. I had the smut hut in the summer. The store was a beach house, and so I made it a smut hut because people kept being like, oh, that's just smut, as if it's not valuable, right? And because it has a bit of romance, that somehow it's like been degraded into being this like terms. But I hear people say like, oh, like I love fairy porn, and I'm like, it's not that. Like that's not what this is. So I was trying to kind of like reclaim it, and re-own it, like sort of define the word smut, because I think it's been so misused, and it's like quite unfair, I think, for these authors who spend so much time developing these worlds and characters and stories for there to just be like, because there's 2 chapters that it's, smut. That'd be like saying James Bond, which has lots of romance in it and lots of sex, is porn. And it's not. In fact, I'd argue James Bond is a romance. It's not action. So, but it's because it's women like it. And so therefore it gets to be sort of, it's just another way that they try to keep us small.
There's a misogynistic stereotype of romance and romantasy readers that they're like sad loners, and it's basically an evolution of the crazy cat lady trope. But in actual fact, the community is so strong, both on Book Talk and in real life. Off the back of the success of the heated Rivalry TV adaptation, Sarah held all sorts of community events for the fans, like watch parties and friendship bracelet making, and fans of the series are now going to hockey games together. I've always been a fangirl myself, and I am proud to say that as a teenager, I was an admin for an online fan group. And people, often men, will call fangirls cringe for being loud and excited about what they love. The community you get from other women in fandoms is amazing. To be able to show your unabashed excitement for something on full volume is so freeing. But there's such a nonchalance about masculinity that stops men from being able to do that. And honestly, I think the cringe accusations come from a place of jealousy. When I see men making fun of romance and romantasy readers online, I think, you should be learning from this. You should be using this as a blueprint for how to build a community. Because when women experience loneliness, they set up a book club. But when men get lonely, they become right-wing and start trolling women on the internet. Sarah said the community has become the best part about Saucy books.
I mean, it's the one thing that was sort of core to me opening from the very beginning. I've always wanted it to be community focused. So it has been lovely. And because it's the whole store is romance, it means that like anybody who comes in here and has read anything, for the most part, people connect with each other. So I find that customers will be in here and they talk to each other about what they've read recently, and they'll give each other recommendations, and people have definitely met at events and become friends. And, that's great to see. We have quite an active WhatsApp community. I have a lot of like repeats, and yeah, it's become such a lovely, lovely community. It's, you can connect over books quite easily and like chat about the characters and your theories. And then that's a nice entry point into like your other values and interests.
I asked Sarah for her recommendations for newbies, everyone, not just women, who want to dip their toes into the genre. What should they start with?
Oh, there's so many good ones. Oh my gosh. I think the thing that is tricky with Romantasy is because you're doing this amazing world building, they tend to be series, which you want to be in a series because you're like, you spend all this time like learning about the physical place, and the author's done a great job of inventing this whole world. So like, you don't want to leave it after 300 pages, right? So people can tend to be a little like overwhelmed by the world building or the thought that they'd have to read multiple books. I personally think that it's like so fun because it means you get to stay with these characters and go on like a journey. So if they're up for like doing that, I think any of Sarah J. Maas's book, if you want to start with A Court of Thorn and Roses, you need to get through books 1 and 2. That's where the real magic happens. She's the easiest because it's not, yes, it's like fae and fantasy, but it's a very like natural, easy way to get into the genre. Fourth Wing also is like very popular and tends to be what people start with.
On Book Talk, when women are recommending romance and romantasy books, they'll often talk about a spice level, which is how explicit the sex is in the book. Sarah said she plans on creating a spiceometer in the style of the Nando's chili, ranging from soft to more hardcore. But the soft stuff can still be just as powerful, on the page or on the screen, like the pivotal canon moment in Joe Wright's 2005 Pride and Prejudice adaptation with Mr. Darcy's hand flex. It changed cinema forever. Sarah said that a lot of the covers of these books can be misleading when you're trying to gauge the spice level. Like the front cover of the Heated Rivalry books are these very wholesome illustrations of 2 men playing hockey, and then you open the book and, spoilers, read the trophy scene where Ilya bends Shane over in front of all of his trophies, does him from behind, and uses a vibrating cough ring on him. So what is it about romance fiction and romantasy that creates the perfect environment for erotica? It's the yearning, the slow burn, the forbidden. In Heated Rivalry, not only are they closeted, but they're high-profile hockey players in one of the most infamously macho and homophobic sports. In Bridgerton, the foreplay is all in eyes, catching from across the room and hand-touching. Period dramas are like a cheat code for creating an erotic charge, because the social norms of the Regency era, which is where Bridgerton and Pride and Prejudice are set, means sex has to wait. It's forbidden and all done in secret. With romantasy, the world building is similar to period dramas, because the societies often have all sorts of rules and rival tribes, or the characters have actual physical traits that create a barrier to sex. Like in Twilight, he's a vampire and he knows that if he tastes her blood, he'll never be able to stop drinking her because she's so delicious and he's completely obsessed with her, which is so sexy. And across this entire genre, the focus on the build-up isn't to say that women don't enjoy casual sex. The build-up allows an emotional connection to be made, meaning we, the reader or the viewer, can empathize with the character and put ourselves in her shoes. When you're heavily invested, it's like you're in that room being bent over some trophies. I asked Sarah about this. As an expert in romance fiction, why does she think these books are so popular with women?
So like one of the things that I think we all collectively enjoy about Romantasy, myself included, is that you have really strong female characters written from a female perspective. So this is like the one place in media where you get to experience the female gaze instead of the male gaze. It's everywhere else. So this is the only place I would say or argue that like it's the female gaze, and which is such a lovely, it's such a like nice breath of fresh air, frankly. So to have, I think a lot of it is these female characters going through these like trials and tribulations, discovering their self-worth and power along the way, which is very, as you put yourself in their shoes, like, and then you've got male characters, men who have like really good communication skills and really good chemistry. And I think that that's not something we see or experience in day-to-day life. Like, that's why I think actually ice hockey romance is so popular, because you've got this like hyper masculine sport that then like the thought that person is like a total softie on it, off the ice. There's something like inherently like really sexy about that. There's like, and I think that because in these books, the sex isn't, the women are being objectified or like used or violated. Like so much of sex in other forms of media is violent. It's like violent and is more about us. Like there's not really any consent. There's not really any love, honestly, like deep relationships and like connection. So most of the time you see stuff that's like portrayed and it's like quite aggressive and violent towards women. And in this case, it's not. I also think that's why Heated Rivalry is done so well too, is because you have women, you can watch a relationship unfold on screen that doesn't have any of that in it because they aren't women. So, that's is a nice departure. I think it shows like really good modeling. And for people who have had those kinds of experiences, I think that they find a little bit of healing through some of these stories because there's this other way. There's these other like a new bar to set of like how you should be treated, how you want to be loved, basically. Like what turns you on, like what gets you excited, like what do you find is like pleasurable and hot. And like, sometimes it can be a bit of obviously some escapism, but other times I think that it does help people like recognize where the bar might be, where they might have not known because they haven't seen it like modeled in any other way or by any other person.
In the first series of this podcast, we talked about the orgasm gap, and we spoke to Dr. Karen Gurney, who is an amazing sexologist and psychotherapist. She said that without a doubt, the most common question she gets is from straight women asking her, am I gay because I only watch girl-on-girl porn? But she was like, it makes total sense that you want to watch this instead of hetero porn because it's not showing you sex through this lens of oppression and violence. And I think it's really interesting that for straight women to get off, we're removing men from the equation altogether. No men means no violence. So what about male-on-male erotica? When women watch porn, we'll often identify with the woman in the scene, so it makes a lot of sense that straight women loved Heated Rivalry because the threat of that very specific patriarchal gendered violence is removed. And central to the sex scenes is clear verbal consent, which is really important to note because in an era where conservatives are pushing back against the progress of the Me Too movement, Heated Rivalry is proof that showing consent on screen isn't just necessary, it actually makes the sex more titillating for the viewer. During the scenes, Ilya whispers, is this okay? Is this still okay? It makes it so much sexier because you genuinely believe the emotion and care. Without that, it's like two soulless blow-up dolls having sex. There's no empathy, no emotional stakes. Can you imagine if the standard in porn was two people saying, is this okay? Does this feel good? No exaggeration, I really think it would revolutionize a lot of the hookups women are having with men. When it became clear that Heated Rivalry was incredibly popular with straight women, everyone was surprised apart from straight women. We've been begging for on-screen representation of men being vulnerable, emotional, and dropping the aggressive, hyper-masculine thing since forever. I do think the tide is finally turning on this, though, in part due to the boom of romance fiction and romantasy too, where the male love interests are emotionally intelligent, caring, sensitive, and at times they physically present as more feminine than hypermasculine. Writers are picking up on the fact that for so long, men have been writing the male love interests and assuming what women find hot, but instead they're just writing what they find impressive in other men. We want Harry Styles in a tutu, but they write Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. It's a classic case of the male power fantasy taking priority over the female gaze. There's been a lot of discourse online about women's response to Heated Rivalry, so I read some hot takes, and I found this quote from an article titled Women Are Feral for Heated Rivalry. What does that say about men? By Julia Carey Wong in The Guardian. She says, the fervent popularity of Heated Rivalry suggests that for many, the real romantasy is not sex and romance with dragons and fairies, but sex and romance without misogyny and gendered hierarchy. If the only way to get that in today's media environment is through sex and romance without any women, they'll take it. This is not a new phenomenon either. Japanese manga and anime about male-on-male romance is incredibly popular, and it's mostly written by women for women. The genre of books is called yaoi, or more so BL these days, which is short for boy love, and it owes much of its success to fan fiction. In her book, Girls Who Like Boys, Women and Gay Male Pornography and Erotica, Lucy Neville says erotic stories that focus exclusively on men sidestep the kind of gendered power imbalances that structure intimacy between men and women, both in fiction and in real life. When I spoke to Sarah from Saucy Books, she explained the relationship between women, depictions of sex, and violence so well. And I'm not surprised because she spent hours and hours talking to women in her shop about why they love these books. She's like an oracle for women's desires. And it's a delicate art. The debate we're having now about whether to censor porn or not is not new. I'm going to give you a brief history lesson on the so-called feminist porn wars from the 70s and 80s, because the arguments being made then are coming up again now in the news, in politics, between parents and teachers in the school playground, and among feminist writers and creators on TikTok. These wars, heavy on the quotation marks, were a reaction to explicit magazines and films. To put it simply, there were two groups, the feminists against it and the sex-positive feminists. The anti-porn feminists, like Andrea Dworkin, said that porn objectifies women and promotes violence, and sex-positive feminists like Gail Rubin still shared concerns about violence but said sexual freedom is a feminist issue and it shouldn't be censored. She said doing so would give permission to police sexuality, putting queer people at risk. And as you can imagine, lots of other ideologies cropped up alongside these disagreements and continue to do so, like transphobia, sex worker exclusionary takes, anti-BDSM, or anything deemed outside of the sexual norm, which people just used to sweepingly refer to as sadomasochism. Andrea Dworkin has become popular on feminist TikTok as more and more women start to deconstruct the violence they've grown up with in porn. And while I don't agree with all of her arguments, I'm grateful to her for starting this conversation and paving the way for the debates we can have now. Here's a quote from her 1981 book, Pornography: Men Possessing Women. Pornography is a central mechanism by which male power over women is maintained and exercised. It teaches men that women are inferior, that their desires do not matter, and that their bodies exist for male use. So that's an anti-porn take. And to contrast that, here's a quote from sex-positive feminist Gail Rubin's book, published a few years later in 1984, called Thinking Sex. Condemnation of sexual acts, sexual representation, or subcultures as inherently oppressive risks aligning feminism with the forces of repression rather than with liberation. Feminism should seek to distinguish between actual harm and socially constructed stigma, rather than treating sexuality itself as a moral failure. But things have changed since the 80s.
Interactive appetite, searching for a website, a window to the world that to get online.
Take the spin, now you're in with Techno Set, you're going surfing on the internet.
Internet porn came along and blew everything up. Towards the end of the 90s, it became accessible to the masses. And now, after nearly 30 years of completely unregulated access, bit by bit, legislation has started to come in which bans depictions of violence against women, like choking, and restricts access for under 18s. In the UK, you have to upload a picture of your ID just to access a porn site. So some feminist groups are celebrating these restrictions, and others are raising concerns about censorship, about how this will impact the safety of sex workers, and how effective banning really is when under 18s can just use a VPN. And surely the only really effective solution is sex education that includes porn literacy. So what's it like to learn about sex through porn? I'm going to tell you. I grew up with completely unregulated access to internet porn, and everything I learned about sex, I learned from movies and porn, because the state failed in its fundamental responsibility to educate all of us about sex and media literacy. I got a mobile phone at 11 and was able to access porn instantly. And while 13 is the average age that most people watch it for the first time in the US and the UK, 25% of people start at age 11 and 10% by the time they're 9. So at age 11, I was able to see whatever hardcore porn I wanted, which, like most people who watch porn, was pretty much every day. When I started having sex with men, they would copy the acts of violence they'd seen online on me and my body. And I didn't know any different, because nobody talked about it. One of the many amazing books I read for this episode was The Right to Sex by Amia Srinivasan. Here's a quote from the chapter called Talking to My Students About Porn. But if it weren't for pornography, one woman said, how would we ever learn how to have sex? Almost every man in that class would have had his first sexual experience in front of a screen. And almost every woman in that class would have had her first sexual experience, if not in front of a screen, then with a boy whose first sexual experience had been. In that sense, her experience too would have been mediated by a screen. by what the screen instructed him to do. For me and many other women under 35 who grew up with this, I thought it was normal for sex to be painful and at times violent, and to sometimes have to cover up bruises on my neck with makeup the next day, or show them off like a badge of honor because I'm the cool girl who's chill with porn. And I am sure there have been times that I copied something I saw online on a guy without checking if he even wanted that or if he was okay. And I don't say that to be performatively balanced, I genuinely believe that to be true. When I speak to women about porn, which is all the time, I've found that consuming unregulated porn without real sex education alongside it means that for many of us, we've learned that sex with men is entangled with violence. And while not all porn is violent, you are always one click away from seeing it. And once you do, whatever mood you were in, you are quickly snapped out of. Your heart is racing and you can't breathe because your body keeps the damn score. It can be really hard to be able to pick apart that enmeshment of sex and violence, to really let go and be totally present during sex with men, not wondering if violence is creeping around the corner. And you'd think that after all of this, I'd be applauding the heavy-handed bans on porn sites, or banning access to social media for under 18s. But I'm not. Conservatives love to ban stuff instead of educating people, and proper sex education is always going to be a more powerful solution. There are well-documented widespread cases of abuse on mainstream porn sites like trafficking, underage, and non-consensual videos. These, of course, should be regulated. The problem occurs, though, when conservatives hijack thoughtful concerns raised by feminists about depictions of non-consensual violence, and they weaponize it, jumping on the bandwagon so they can promote homophobic and transphobic ideas. The type of shit they come out with is like, yes, porn is bad, and social media makes your kids trans. This is already happening in the US. The groups that are campaigning for age verification laws, like the Heritage Foundation, are doing exactly what sex-positive feminists like Gail Rubin warned us about. They're a right-wing think tank, and their slogan is to save America by saving the family. They want to strip back abortion rights, encourage heterosexual marriage through economic incentives, which is cooked, roll back trans rights to protect women's spaces, and guess what else? They want to implement age verification on social media to restrict access to under 18s. This organization says sex education that includes queer identities sexualizes children and promotes sexual behavior. And I remember this when I was at school. Some parents would pull their kids out of our sex ed lessons, using religion as their excuse, and saying it would put ideas in their head. And honey, your kids are going to get in a car and drive it whether you like it or not. So would you rather they did it with or without a driver's license? So when feminists raised concerns about porn, violence, and women, this was not what they had planned, to be shoulder to shoulder with these ideologies. If you're a woman like me, someone who's grown up with unregulated porn and is untangling the relationship between sex and violence, I don't want your only solution to be to disengage from erotica altogether, for men's violence to rob us of our freedom to explore our sexuality. So what if the alternative was better porn? There's some fantastic ethical porn out there made for women, like Erica Lust's Lust Cinema or Bellessa, but maybe what you're looking for isn't even visual. I want erotica that makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck. Mainstream porn doesn't make me feel like that. And I know for a fact it doesn't make men feel like that either. It's a means to an end. It's free and it's there. A subtle thing that you notice about how porn just isn't made with women in mind is how the women having sex with men are encouraged to really amp up and perform sexual noises, while men are often much quieter. But women want signs that men are enjoying themselves. We want regular green lights throughout the scene. We want men who whimper. So if you're looking for that, may I introduce you to audio erotica?
Your eyes have been shining a bit differently during the sex lately.
I'm gonna scroll. Why don't you call out some categories that appeal to you? British accent.
Good girl. You're so cute. Wow, that was unbelievable. I just can't get enough of you.
Audio erotica can be anything from smut audiobooks, guided masturbation, explicit sex noises, or point-of-view fantasies, which is when the narrator is dirty talking to you as if you're having sex with them. There's also overheards, where you're listening in on two different people having sex, which is great if you have a voyeuristic side. But it's all fiction and everyone involved is consenting, from the writers to the voiceover actors to the editors. There are a few apps out there, but I'm going to focus on Quinn because it's dominating the market. Its listeners tune in for an average of 24 million minutes every month. Once again, it's a great time to be a horny woman. I say woman because according to Quinn, over 75% of their subscribers are women. Quinn does this really clever thing where it snaps up the actors who everyone's swooning over. The Heated Rivalry stars recorded a 3-part fairy smut series about rival fairy tribes just 1 month after the show was released. They've also had actors from other shows with a predominantly women fan base, like Andrew Scott after he was in Fleabag, Christopher Briney from The Summer I Turned Pretty, and Catherine Moynig from The L Word. So the romantasy isn't just in the fairy smut, it's in the emotional bond and trust that's been preemptively built with the actors from our favourite TV shows. You hear a voice narrating a sex scene and you know that voice and already have a trusting relationship with it. I've been reading people's reviews of Quinn on Reddit and I loved this one. Last summer, I was scrolling Instagram and a Quinn ad popped up where people were creating wet sounds by hand-stirring macaroni. I thought to myself, there's no way this is real, and checked it out purely from curiosity. Lo and behold, here I am, 14 months later, and have absolutely zero regrets. It's helped me tap into my sexuality that I felt had long gone dormant. I feel like a reinvigorated woman. I want to be clear here that this is not an ad for Quinn. They haven't paid me. I even asked to interview the CEO and she didn't respond. But I do use the app and I really like it. Quinn also has plenty of kinky stuff. Side note, if you're only into vanilla stuff, then fantastic. Love it. There's no shame in that. I love eye contact and missionary too. It's the best. But when we talk about kink and women, anti-porn feminists like Andrea Dworkin have said consensual BDSM is a reflection of inequality, and that playing with dominant and submissive roles between men and women reinforces the patriarchy. But I just don't think it's that simple. Women, despite what some podcasts say, are people, and people's sexualities are complex and totally unique. And when you look at the list of categories on erotica apps like Quinn, categories that include kink and power dynamics, it points to how women want kinky stuff. We just want it to be consensual. And it's a fantasy, after all. A key part of a BDSM scene is that you're making a story together. But in unregulated porn online, you can't be sure that all parties are consenting, or that the dynamics are play or real. You often watch it thinking, is that woman okay? Is she in pain? Is she even 18? Quinn has said explicitly that it will not have any audios that contain sexual assault, family members, or anyone under legal age. And it's crazy that that's the bar, but it's enough to get me on board to leave free video porn and pay a small amount a month for something that provides a sense of safety around sexual exploration. If you can't afford a monthly membership, however, you can try my new favourite thing, which is Whimper Talk. I discovered it when researching this episode, so if you go on TikTok and search men planking until failure, what you'll find is men filming themselves planking, and as it gets more and more difficult, they become more vocal and the sounds they make sound like sex noises. That's basically it. And it's like a knowing wink wink to curb the algorithm that would normally remove sexual content. Lucky for you, I'm going to play you some. So I'm just going to go on my phone on TikTok and I'm searching planking until failure. Here we go.
Fuck.
You get the picture. Okay, so I have one final erotica recommendation for you, and it's a big one. It's maybe my favorite of them all. This is especially useful if you don't have the time to read a whole series of romance books, and if you're not into fantasy, you want something more realistic, like non-fiction.
I'm Carly. I'm the creator of Aurore, which is a space for confessional sex stories. I've been doing this work now for 6 years, but I would say that I conceived the idea many years before I birthed it. It was a very long pregnancy. And I had done some sex writing in my past, and a big part of my past was I did this series there called Talking to Strangers, which just meant going to a bar and striking up conversations with random people and asking them about their sex lives and their sex tastes. And that's something that has always come really naturally to me, talking about sex, destigmatizing sex. And as a writer who had pitched for years and had a lot of rejections, freelance writing in New York is super competitive. I started to think about maybe I just start my own thing. And then I now have over 300 stories on this site from people all over the world that submit their real sex stories or their real fantasies. It started off just my own stories and stories of friends, and it has really grown in the most beautiful way.
Carly had been umming and ahhing about setting up Aurore. And then, just like that episode of Broad City, she said that Trump getting elected genuinely impacted her desire to have sex with men. She'd also lost her job and she felt like she was at rock bottom. So creating Aurore was the light at the end of her tunnel, pun intended. When you go on the Aurore website, it describes itself as non-fiction erotica, meaning people write about the sex they've had for you to read, for your pleasure. But that doesn't mean there's no fantasy involved whatsoever.
So absolutely includes fantasy. And I like to also say that I'm not going to fact check your fever dream, right? Like the real thing is that it should be based in reality, something that can happen. We don't have fairy porn on the side or like monster creature stuff. And that's just like really a personal preference for me, but also because I believe that the most transformative, important, sexiest stories are those that have really happened, and that because the writer in creating those stories is putting all that emotion and experience into them, and I think that's what makes them so rich and so lovely to read as a voyeur.
Anyone can submit a story, including you. There's something so cathartic about writing about your sexual experiences. If you had a really good time, you're immortalizing that memory by passing it on so other people can get pleasure from it too. If you had a bad time, once you've had some distance from it, rewriting a better ending and putting that out into the world can be like a release.
Nonfiction erotica, like when I first started the site, a lot of people were like, what is that? And I don't know if it's a term that is used often or not. And I think a lot of erotica obviously is based in our own experiences or our own fantasies. But I do think that especially in the writing, there is really something powerful about telling your own stories. I do writing workshops, and I always offer people to change the ending or change the narrative because I ask for positive sex stories on the site, right? Like in my reaction to all of the bad stuff and why I wanted to create this space. And so if you have, for instance, I have somebody who wrote a story about their breakup, and in it was this final fuck where she was so in control, she's on top, she's fucking him knowing that they're breaking up, but she has this last kind of word, and that didn't really happen in the relationship. I know this because she is also my friend, but she was able to rewrite that story for herself, and I think it's a really powerful thing.
Carly coaches writers, so she can help you work on your story. And I'm just going to say now, learning how to be a great erotic writer in an era where romance fiction and romantasy is bigger than ever is such a valuable skill. I feel like it's on a par with learning how to code.
So I get submissions through a submission form on the site, and I do the first read on them. I like to say that within the first couple sentences, I know if it's a story that I'm going to want to work on or not. I get a few stories that I barely need to touch that are just like, they arrive so wonderful and it's just like pushed through to publication. And then I get a lot of stories where the bones of it are good. Like the story itself is one that's really important and I think needs to be told, but we need to massage the writing. We need to massage the structure. And that's where I work one-on-one with writers. So a lot of times I'm asking writers to go a little bit deeper into the why this happened or the why they express like a fear or trepidation within this sexual experience. And I ask them to explore that, to share with the reader why they felt that way. And also, a lot of my edits are on more character development, wanting to hear more about these people. And I often give this edit of like, why do we care about these people having sex? By the time they're fucking, I want to be so invested that I'm like rooting for them. I'm really into them finally having this moment together.
Just like Sarah, the owner of romance bookshop Saucy Books, Carly said the key to a good erotic story is the character development. How can the sex be titillating for the reader if we don't understand and empathize with the character?
One of the really common exercises I give to writers as an edit, but also in my writing workshops, is to describe yourself, your body, and your character from the eyes of somebody who finds you so fucking sexy, who wants to have sex with you. And you do that as well with the supporting character, whoever else is in this story, because you need the reader to be as seduced by this person as you are in order to have it be a really worthwhile erotic story, in my opinion. And so a lot of the work doing this one-on-one with writers, it's like this kind of healing, therapeutic, coaching moment. And yeah, I did not foresee these parts of the work, you know? I really just wanted to create the content I wanted to consume. But in this process, I've realized it is so much deeper than that. You know, another prompt I like to give in writing workshops is to think about how you would have sex in a different way if you didn't have any insecurities about how your body looks. Like, what would you do differently if you felt completely comfortable in your body? And writing from that place then allows you to get more in touch with seeing yourself as sexy, as desirable. And that's what makes good writing, good erotica. But that's also what makes you have better sex. And ultimately, that's what I want for people.
Carly and I spoke about sex scenes in TV and film, and how often foreplay is just skipped over. Apart from Bridgerton, which we love because they're all about action. And Carly said the build-up in erotica and romance fiction is just like foreplay. It's essential and it makes for better sex.
I kind of think it's about foreplay. And for women, we require so much more foreplay and stimulation in order to have pleasurable sex and potentially orgasm. It's something like 20 to 40 minutes to get to proper arousal levels. And I think that's missing in a lot of our sex and our hookups. And I think it's also missing in a lot of media that we've been shown. It's getting better for sure. But I think of it too as spontaneous desire versus responsive desire. And this is another thing. Responsive desire is a lot more common in long-term relationships, and it's a lot more common for women. And it's not like, so spontaneous, just to like get into the differences, spontaneous desire is like all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, I'm so horny right now, and just like want to have sex or be intimate in some way. Responsive desire happens when you feel an intimate touch. Maybe it's like a little shoulder squeeze or rub from your partner. And then your body starts to think about sex a little bit slower, a little bit curious, but may still require more build up, more suggestions before really getting to the point where you want to have sex. And I think with porn, a lot of it is created for straight men to get off in a very immediate, easy way. And that's just not how most women get off. So porn with the plot line, you're creating the space for women to have that arousal, that slow responsiveness, the yearning, all of these moments in the buildup are giving us that heightened desire, heightened desire. It's also like clearly just makes for a better story when you're wondering if they will or if they won't.
Carly, like many of us, has had a similar complicated relationship with porn. And she also talked about that chill girl thing, of growing up and being shown porn and having to be okay with it because the guys were.
So my first experience with internet porn was kind of having it arrive like a virus on your computer and just like seeing all this stuff that at 11, 12 years old, I had never even seen in real life. So seeing something visually that graphic before you've even experienced it, I think is a very strange thing. And then as I got older, seeing porn, you know, hanging out with guy friends and they're like, oh yeah, I watched this. Like it was always not consensual. And I think that that kind of informed some of my feelings toward it. But of course, obviously, this is nothing new. But there's a lot of, I think, limitations in representation in pornography. And I think that a lot of it kind of leaves women feeling bad about their bodies or uncomfortable with the visuals that are being shown or the acts that are being shown and expected to enjoy that. But I think it's really important also to make people feel that their desires are not shameful, even if they are feeling some shame around these things that interest them. That if you're safely exploring, consensually exploring, that there's no shame in that. And I like to give people permission by telling those more difficult stories. It's really, to sum up, it's super common for women to be interested in submission, be interested in BDSM or dominance, and find that watching it can be too intense. Reading it, you are much more in control of all the elements at play, of who you're seeing doing this with, of how the situation looks, the space that you're in. You can use your imagination. And I think that we're also just accustomed to so much violence in media that there's kind of a knee-jerk reaction and a clenching. Some shows I watch, I'm just like, oh my God, my shoulders are like hunched the whole time. I have to like relax and breathe. And I think that that's another thing that nuance we could never get in visual pornography. So I love that I can give that.
Carly said the majority of her writers and readers are women, but she has some amazing male writers, and she's looking for more.
It is mostly women, but it's about 70% women and 70% women and queer people, but I would say that the queer folks percentage is smaller. 30% men, which is not nothing. And I think very hopeful as well. I think a lot of men sign up for the site as a gift for a partner or as something to do an activity with a partner. And I think that's a beautiful thing as well. It's often like the suggestion to watch porn together is very common for couples that are trying to reignite a spark. But reading erotica together, sharing a story together, I think allows for a lot more creativity between you and a partner, and also recreating scenarios, trying on the role play stuff with a story because you have that reference point. Instead of watching like a very quick clip, you have like the full rundown of how to recreate it. I think that's really helpful. I've been amazed at how many wonderful male writers have submitted to Aurore. And that's another part of the hope, right? Like, I'm like, oh, wow, okay, there are people out there that totally fucking get it. Of course, I get submissions from men where I'm like, you did not understand the assignment. But yes, like, I think that men do want and deserve alternate pathways to pleasure. And I say, of course, Aurore was built for women and queer folks, but it actually is a treasure trove of knowledge for straight men because it's stories about a woman telling exactly what turns them on, exactly what they want. And I think a lot of men have tapped into that, both the reading and the writing. I have one male writer right now who has been submitting story after story. He lost his wife of 40 years suddenly due to really aggressive cancer. And he's writing their erotic memories as a way to memorialize their relationship and his love for her. And it's just so beautiful. And the stories are amazing. I mean, they're all like kind of set in the 70s, 80s. It's like so good.
Carly said she's tried reading Romantasy, but it's a little too much of a slow burn for her. She, like Sarah from Saucy Books, doesn't use the word smut either to describe what she does.
Smut, I've never loved the word. I use it sometimes because I just need to interchange words every now and then. I need a synonym. But smut, like, to me sounds like a dirty thing that is meant to be hidden or not on your shelf. It's like, I don't love that word so much. My stories are quite graphic. Like, my stories are pornography in a sense, you know, like they are erotica because they're a slow burn and they have this character development and it is like unraveling as opposed to in your face. But the sex is quite graphic. And I haven't found that in as many romantasy books as I thought. I know some of them are, but yeah, I was kind of surprised. So if anyone listening like wants it to be sexier and dirtier, you know where to find me.
And any advice for people starting out in erotic writing?
Well, I like to ask for the sex that changed you. So write about the sex that changed you. Write about the sex that you can't forget. Like, what is the thing that you go to when you're solo pleasuring yourself? Like, what's the thing that you keep thinking of? Who's the person you keep thinking of? And also, who's the person that you haven't met yet that you want to be with? So again, that fantasy is always open. I think people feel like they have to have a wild story to tell, and I don't think that's it at all. It's really just being willing to sink into the details of an experience and tell it. Even writing it down, whether it's published or not, is a really powerful act. So I encourage everyone to write.
I'm so glad romance books and audio erotica exist. It serves a really important purpose, which is to provide a safe, rich world for women to explore their sexuality. Which is why I will always defend romantasy readers from the sneering comments claiming these books aren't highbrow enough. Not only is this genre helping to keep the publishing industry afloat, but these writers have managed to create a space where women can explore their sexuality freely, without shame and safe from the threat of violence. It's not too much to ask for safety to be a prerequisite to sex. Yet it feels like this radical overhaul to everything we've been taught about porn and sex with men. And as we get better at understanding what women want to see, I think we'll see better depictions of women having sex on screen. I love the quote, "Men masturbate with their left hand and point with their right." It's never been more true than it is now. There are so many men who will happily consume porn but will vilify OnlyFans models online. So much so that calling someone an OnlyFans model is meant to be like the worst insult directed at women online. But sir, do you not realise that you are part of the porn industry too? This is a supply and demand economy. Obviously though, for these men, it's about power. They can sexualise us when we're not looking, but the moment it's sex on our terms, our own sexuality, it threatens their control. When I've talked about sex online, or just me as a woman having a sexuality, it makes men really angry. It usually manifests in a spectrum of online abuse, starting from men saying, "I'm too ugly to have sex," all the way up to sexual assault threats, death threats, and men questioning if my dad abused me as a child, because a woman with even the slightest hint of promiscuity must be a product of abuse. It's been a really, really difficult thing to learn how to navigate. How to express your sexuality within the constraints of men trying to control it. It feels like at every turn, men have tried to rob us of our freedom to have sex through their violence on our bodies and their violence in erotic content. And at times, it's worked, stopping us from wanting to have sex with men altogether. But I'm not letting them do that anymore. I want better. Women want better. And we're making it. We're making erotica where your fundamental right to pleasure and safety exists. Just like Julia Carey Wong said in her Guardian article, maybe the fantasy isn't the fairies and the dragons, it's the freedom to have sex free from the patriarchy. And in order to make that feel real, the story has to be set in a world other than this one. To end this episode, I thought it would be nice for me to introduce you to some of the erotic content I've been talking about today. I'm going to read you a non-fiction story from Aurore that I've chosen. And by me reading it to you, we're doubling up because this will also count as audio erotica. I'm putting on my glasses like Gillian Anderson to read this. If you're new to audio erotica, this is a great introduction because you know my voice now. You've been listening to me speak for hours. This story is about a high-performing working mum and a younger man, and I chose it because it's beautifully written. The character development is great, and there's some great build-up happening. Sadly, I've had to cut out the really explicit parts because it will get removed, so I'm replacing those bits with ... Here we go. I love feeling like I'm good at what I do, and the closest thing to a holiday for a mum like me is a tech conference. But the last conference set the scene for my worst pitch to date. Last meeting of the day, 0 energy left in me. 9 out of 10 meetings are with men. This last one was no different, except for the kind of man that showed up. His appearance was so carefully designed. His searing eyes, blue, and smile, killer, made me stutter. So I had to avoid them if I cared anything about fluency. 2 minutes in, he figured me out and revelled in my weakness. Me, a high-performing working mum with so much that comes with it. Him, and everything is yet to come, enjoy the moment type. Yes, younger. And such a good, no, perfect match for the part of me I've been ignoring these past years. We got to know each other like that for months, until the next event brought us to the same country again. It's hard for me to look into his eyes now that he's here, in front of me. We make it to my hotel room untouched. He goes in first, and now he's a few feet from the door, watching me step inside. I thought it, he said it before, it was obvious from day one that this was where we would end up. I shut the door, and with it, all context and the notion of time go blank. I ran this in my head so many times that I'm not sure which reality I'm consuming at the moment. I want to look at him some more, so we don't kiss, we don't touch. He has that white shirt, no creases, that wraps a bit tight around his shoulders. I've commended that fabric on its strength in my head every time I saw him from behind. I unbutton it now as I think about that. Him in the unbuttoned shirt alone. The shoes go, the socks go, the trousers go. Nothing left but the shirt. I run my hand through the whole outline of his torso. His neck, his face, his mouth. His smile is just as hard to look at. After my mouth maps his collarbone and chest, his knees get just a little bit weak as I dig my hands into his thighs and ... His breathing is making me crazy, and impatience takes over. I bolt from my knees to find his lips so I can finally meet them with mine. Any thought I may have had is exiled from my head as my focus narrows on taste alone. All the time that has led up to this moment is exploding on my tongue. I catch my reflection in a big mirror and study my body like it belongs to someone else. My eyes land on my C-section scar and I smile at its contradictions. All the selflessness of being a mum versus the complete selfishness of being here, just for me. My body wants to know him better first. We try everything out. He notices every shift in me, the catch in my breath, the way my body tightens, the quiet sounds I can't hold back. I watch as he slows way down and becomes more and more deliberate. Sweat gathers on my chest. His fingers trace through it, as we had both imagined they would if we ever got to meet again. I try to hold back and stay in the moment a little longer, but it's become impossible. I clutch his arm with my left hand as I touch my ... with the other. Fireworks. My mind goes blank and I'm completely driven by my body in what feels like complete possession. Warm and quiet, we bask in our exhaustion. The bed is a mess. The white shirt lies between us, all creases and proof. He'll press it back to perfect tomorrow. I'll carry the folds a little longer. It's poetry. It's poetry. I need a cold shower to cool off. Thanks for tuning in to No Worries If Not. Thanks to our guests, Sarah Maxwell from Saucy Books and Carly Pifer from Aurore. The theme music was composed by Meg Jenkins. The titles were animated by Angelica Lena. The script editors were my mum, Jackie O'Farrell, and Will Hilton. Also produced by Will Hilton. No Worries If Not is produced, written, and hosted by me, Lily O'Farrell. If you've been affected by sexual violence, contact Rape Crisis England and Wales for advice or for the 24-hour helpline and live chat. Details at rapecrisis.org.uk.